Today's episode has been brought to you by Schedulicity
and by the Yoga for Pelvic Health 20-hour yoga teacher training. This is all online connected yoga teachers. It's on demand. You can take it now. It was done live, and this is the replay. It is ready to go whenever you are. And the exciting thing is, until the end of 2021, it also counts for any Yoga Alliance continuing education credits if you're looking for those. To find out more, you can go to the show notes or to pelvichealthprofessionals.com and look for the 20-hour Yoga for Pelvic Health training. Hello and welcome to the Connected Yoga Teacher podcast. If you're new here, I'm your host, Shannon Crow. I use she, her pronouns, and a really very random fact about me is that I actually like snakes. And I feel really bad if I've upset you in any way. If you don't enjoy snakes and you're like, this isn't why I came to this podcast. Why are you talking about snakes? I grew up with a mom who was terrified of snakes. We were never allowed to have any snakes in the house. Toy snakes in the house. She didn't want to see any nature videos with snakes, even though I really love these things. She never wanted to hear about snakes either. So you might want to skip forward if that's you, because I want to tell you that when I was about 3 or 4 years old, my mom was outside doing something. I forget if she was painting or cleaning windows, something where she was really busy. And she knew that I was just, bopping around the house, doing what I do, looking for creatures and critters, because that's what I did a lot when I was younger. And she came in the house, and in the bathroom, I was in there. She had finally found me because I got quiet. You know how it is if you've ever looked after a toddler or a young child. And I was in the bathroom giving a snake a bath in cold water. I'm sure the snake didn't appreciate it. The snake never bit me. I'm not actually sure. I only know this story through my mom and pictures. I don't actually even remember it. But you can imagine my mom was very upset, was really screaming and yelling in terror, and then I wouldn't go near the snake. So then she had to convince me that no, snakes are good, and I need to pick up that snake and take it back outside where I found it. So that's my snake story. I wonder if you also have a snake story. I wonder if you like or dislike snakes due to fear. I don't like it when I'm in bare feet and they're near my feet. It frightens me a little bit, but so do like snails or mice snails don't move very quickly, but you know what I mean. Okay, let's dig into today's episode. I'm also a mom of 3, a yoga teacher, podcaster, and founder of Pelvic Health Professionals. And this podcast was created for you, so that each and every week you are connected to the information and inspiration that is going to support you as you build this unique yoga business. Last week on the podcast, we had Arunhati Baitmangalkar share with us about how to make our yoga classes on Zoom more personalized. This week, we're again talking about improving our students' experience of yoga classes on Zoom, but this time from a different angle. We're going to be talking about adding closed captions for those Zoom yoga classes. This was actually a live interview that we did with Landen Stacy a while back, and he not only explained how to set up your Zoom account to enable closed captions and live transcriptions, but he also shared more about why captions are so important when we're teaching yoga classes online, along with some other really powerful information. And that's why this is coming to you as a podcast episode. I just thought I have to share this out beyond our YouTube channel. I want to tell you, if you're not already subscribed to our YouTube channel, I'll put a link to that in the show notes. It is worth checking out. We do a couple of live interviews every month. And if you're subscribed, then you'll get a notification, I think. Is that how YouTube works? Maybe you have to click on a bell or something. Let YouTube know that you want to be notified when we're doing a live podcast. So when we did this live, Landen actually prepared a presentation on step-by-step how to use closed captions in our Zoom sessions with yoga students. And you can watch the full video. I'll link to it in the show notes for sure. That's at theconnectedyogateacher.com/229. some people that were there live. There were a couple of people that went in and did the settings as Landen was doing this live presentation and had it all done by the time that the live ended. So it's very simple to do. On top of this, Crunch put together a step-by-step guide that will walk you through this in case you're like, you know what, I'm super busy. I can't go watch a video. Can you just give me the step-by-step? And on top of that, Landen has a free downloadable PDF guide, which includes screenshots. So we've got you all covered, Connected Yoga teachers, if you're looking for either the video, if you're more of a visual learner and you want someone kind of walking you through the steps, or if you're a visual learner and you want screenshots, or you just need the written out description of how to do this. All of the links, as I said, are in the show notes at theconnectedyogateacher.com/229. And if you're on the go and you can't remember what the number was, that's okay. Just go to the website, go to theconnectedyogateacher.com, type in closed captions, and it will come up with this episode. I want to give a shout out of thank you to the Tripping Yogi from the US. Back in April, the Tripping Yogi left a review specifically about the live podcast episode. They said, "Shannon and team, I love your podcast and the Connected Yoga Teacher Facebook group. I've learned so much valuable information, which I incorporate in teaching my yoga classes. Most recently, your podcast with Landen Stacy on closed captioning for online yoga was so informative with the tutorial slides. Without the episode, I would not have known that closed captioning was available on Zoom. Many thanks to you, Landen." Thank you so much for taking the time to leave this 5-star review, the Tripping Yogi from the US. It means a lot that this episode helped you already and that you took the time to leave a review. If you are listening to today's podcast or any podcast along the way that really helps you, it would be so amazing if you would take the time to leave a review and talk about which episode you were listening to and how it was helpful. That also helps other yoga teachers to find our podcast. Now, before we get into the interview with Landen, let's hear our hot tip of the week from the team over at Schedulicity.
Hello, Connected Yoga teachers. This is Marcelina with the Schedulicity Hot Tip of the Week. Your yoga videos are capable of reaching an audience larger than any studio is capable of hosting. Once you get into the swing of making yoga videos, consider creating an informative video to show your students how to book online. We've seen videos like this shared thousands of times on social media, and they never fail to bring in new business. If you do end up making a new video like this, send it our way, and we'll be sure to share it on our pages too.
Thank you so much, Team Schedulicity. Alrighty, let's dive in and meet Landen. Landen Stacy is the owner of Emerald Yoga Studio, located in Pembroke, Massachusetts. Landen discovered yoga in high school when he was offered an alternative to gym class, and he has continued his yoga journey since then, eventually going on to complete his yoga teacher training at the studio he now owns. Landen offers yoga classes that help beginners to feel more relief for their stress by gaining strength, flexibility, and learning how to work with their bodies to feel more comfortable in their skin. Landen loves teaching and the ability to create accessible classes in his studio and aims to create the yoga studio he always wished he had, one that is accessible, inclusive, welcoming, and safe for everyone. I am so excited, Connected Yoga teachers, because we get into parts of that conversation and there are such good nuggets of wisdom to take away if you have a small home studio or a large studio and you're wanting yoga students to feel welcome. Even if you have an online studio, think of the ways that you can really make this personalized, make someone feel like they know what's coming. You'll hear this as Landen dives into this today. All right, let's all learn together about closed captioning for our Zoom yoga classes. Landen, thank you for being here today.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm so excited to be here.
Tell us a bit about your yoga journey. Like, where do you live? Where do you teach? And how did you find yoga and then decide to do closed captioning?
So I live in Pembroke, Massachusetts. My studio is in Pembroke, Massachusetts. And I started yoga when I was in high school. They offered yoga as an alternative to gym class. So I decided to dive into that instead of running the mile. So I took yoga in high school, and then I really enjoyed my time doing it. So after I graduated high school, I kind of continued on with my yoga journey here and there. And then I ended up doing more yoga. I took my teacher training at the studio that I currently own. And I took over the studio 2 years next month. So the studio's been open for about 11 years now. And yeah, I love teaching. I love the ability to create accessible classes in my studio. I like that I have this platform to be able to help people with. And I think I'm trying to create the studio that I always wish that I had. A lot of the times when I used to go to yoga studios, I wouldn't feel welcome, or I wouldn't feel that they were accessible, and I would really struggle with that feeling of I don't belong here. So when I took over Emerald Yoga Studio, I really was trying to create a place that everybody felt included and everybody felt safe in. And that's kind of what led me down the path of closed captioning, because I think that it's such an important thing that we can add to our classes and to our broadcasts and things like that. And it's such a small thing that you can do that really helps a lot of people. And not just people who are hard of hearing, but also people who might have trouble with just general processing of what you're saying, or if they didn't catch what you said, at least usually the closed captioning lags behind you just a little bit, so they can look over and see, oh, you said down dog, and follow along that way.
Right. Oh my gosh, this is amazing. I mean, I use closed captioning when I watch some Netflix shows, especially British shows, because or Scottish accents. Even though it's English, I can't always catch everything. And we're all different learners as well. Oh, I also want to share your website address, emeraldyoga.com. So are you teaching in person now, or all online, or how is that working in Massachusetts?
So both. So we have in-person classes, and we're limited right now to we have 7 spots, where before we had about 24. So we're limited in capacity, and then we're doing a fully virtual schedule as well. So all of our classes are also online.
Do you have students that tell you, like, I come to your classes because you have the closed captioning?
I do, and I also I sort of started the closed captioning because I knew people in my life who used closed captioning on TV and used it on their phone or on a computer and things like that. And it gave me the idea that this is just one thing that we can do that's going to help broaden our audience of people who are going to follow along with my studio. And it's going to help people who maybe couldn't find a yoga studio that would go the extra mile for them to actually put closed captioning on the classes. So I really think that this has helped a lot of people, whether they knew it or not, that they wanted closed captioning, because some people will turn it on, or will turn it on at the beginning of class, and then they'll ask me to turn it off. And I also included that in my presentation on how you can tell your students if they don't want closed captioning for whatever other reason, because some people do, especially if you have some sort of like an executive functioning disorder, it can actually be really distracting to have the closed captionings. So there is sort of like half and half. It's good for some people and it's not good for other people, but I like to give people just the option to be included in closed captioning. And as weird as it is, I'm so grateful that we've gone virtual to be able to offer this to people, because live classes, obviously you can't offer closed captioning in front of you.
Right. Oh, yeah. That's so true. Okay. So this is important that we can turn it on and off.
Right.
And I'm so glad that you're going to show us. I know nothing about this. So what do we need, first of all, to be able to do the closed captioning that you're going to show us? And if at any point I'm asking a question, you want to start the presentation, you just let me know.
I'm going to go ahead and get started, because I actually have a slide in there about the prerequisites that you have to have on Zoom to be able to offer it.
Okay, perfect. Connected Yoga teachers, just a reminder that if you are wanting to see the video, the downloadable PDF, or the notes on how to do this, we have all of those ready for you on the show notes page over at theconnectedyogateacher.com/229.
So I'm going to be going over how to add closed captioning to Zoom for your yoga classes. So first, I wanted to dive into the benefits of actually adding these closed captioning to your yoga classes. So like I said before, it's not only good for people who are deaf or hard of hearing, but it's also good for people for better comprehension. It's good for people who are viewing in sound sensitive environments. For example, if you have a bunch of kids at home that are running around and you can't understand what's happening on the screen, or you can't get your volume loud enough, it's good for that too. And then it's also really good for easily translating into foreign languages. Zoom doesn't do this on its own. So if you are trying to translate it into another language, you have to use a third-party app to do that. But at least you have the option there to grab all of the text and throw it into some sort of a translator. And then if you're somebody who's taking all of your videos like we are and adding them to an on-demand sort of venue or gallery, this is good for video searching and search engine optimization, because you'll be able to have the different words and keywords that a search engine will pick up on in your videos.
Oh my gosh, I love this list, especially like kids running around at home or translating it to a different language. I didn't even think of these things.
Yeah, so it's not just for people. I mean, it is for people who are hard of hearing, but it's also for a bunch of other reasons. And like you said about watching TV with your closed captioning on, because I do that too. It's good for a whole plethora of people who are looking for that extra layer of being able to understand.
Yeah. Okay.
So the requirements to enable closed captioning and live transcription. So when I go over what we're going to go over today, I'm going to talk about closed captioning, which is just the subtitles that pop up below your videos. And then there's also this added feature that Zoom has, which is live transcription. So I'll go into both of those. So just a big overview for the live transcription. So for your account type, you need to have a paid account. So currently this isn't accessible to people who are on just the free unpaid Zoom plan. You have to have either pro, business, education, or enterprise. However, they are rolling out the live transcription to all of the accounts, including free, and they should have this done by fall 2021. Until then, though, you can go in. There's an access button that you can request access to live transcription if you do have a free account until then. So if you go in to try to enable things and you don't see the options, you might just need to do an update, and then everything should be in there. Okay, so now I'm going to go over how to actually enable the closed captioning.
Connected Yoga teachers, this is where the real step-by-step instructions start. And we're not going to play that all for you in the podcast here, because we know that many of you listen on the go. But we have you covered. If you're at your computer, you can actually head right over to our show notes page at theconnectedyogateacher.com/229 and find the step-by-step. And there's not a lot of time in these step-by-steps. So if you fast forward in the video to around 11 minutes, that's where you're going to start to get into the step-by-step. And there's some more good points, and we wanted to make sure that you had them here on the podcast. For example, after Landen walked us through all of the settings, he explained the pros and the cons of the various transcript options. So let's have a listen to that.
You can enable auto transcription, which means it's going to automatically pick up on what you're saying, and it's just going to create a closed captioning right across the bottom of your screen. So I've also listed some pros and cons to this option. So you'll want to click this enable auto transcription. The pros, so it's easy to use. You just turn it on and it immediately starts going. It's mostly accurate. It's not 100%. This will be available to all plans, including the free plan, by fall 2021. And after you create a live transcript, you can actually save this transcript after as almost like when you save your chat box in your Zoom meeting, you can save your transcript to be able to reference later, or to be able to, if you're recording a podcast, for example, now you have everything transcribed and you can take all of that information and copy it into another file. The cons of using this live auto transcription are it's only supported in English currently. It's not 100% accurate. So sometimes I'll say things and then I'll read it over after, and I notice that it's not 100% following along with exactly what I'm saying. currently it's not available for breakout rooms. So if you're doing something other than a yoga class where you're using breakout rooms, you can't currently use this live transcription. You can use closed captioning, but only in one breakout room. You can't use it in all. And it's not so great if you do have background noise. So if you have a lot of stuff going on in the background, or if you're teaching outside and you start to pick up a lot of other noises, or if you have a lot of verbal feedback in your yoga classes, maybe you have a class that you're teaching where a lot of people chime in and they say a lot of things during class, it might not be the greatest because it's also going to pick up on what everybody else is saying. The other good thing that's great about the auto transcription is that it's going to create this transcription on the side that you can view. And if you have people where you're viewing online, so if I'm talking and then another one of my teachers is talking and a student is talking, it's going to break up those people so you can see who said what in sort of like a chat format, but just all live transcribed.
This is amazing. I'm thinking of, like, this is something that I could add to any of my calls, like my Q&A calls, like you said, podcast interviews, where we grab the video to have that transcription. I have another tool that I use for transcription, but this is great. Like, it's available to anyone who pays for Zoom. This is amazing.
Yeah, and then even if you don't currently pay for Zoom, you can also request the feature in the meantime until they get it all rolled out to everybody. I think that makes it even more accessible because I know not everybody has like a paid plan on Zoom.
I'm popping in here again for a moment, Connected Yoga Teachers, because I mentioned a transcript tool that I use. My brother actually created it, and we use it each and every week for the podcasts that we create and the live calls that we do inside of Pelvic Health Professionals. I'll make sure to link to it in the show notes, and I want to, at some point, show you around, maybe a video or something to show you how it works, because it is amazing. If you need a transcription or you're doing some kind of a meditation and you want to talk through your meditation as you teach your class, but then you wish that you had a copy of that written out, this is the tool to use. It is unbelievable. You can upload video or audio. It's searchable. There are so many functions that this tool does, and I'm so grateful that my brother created it. He's a computer genius, and I'm grateful also that he's just an amazing human as well. So I'll make sure to link to it in the show notes. It's called Podsy, and even though my brother and I are family, I actually pay for this tool. It's a very small amount that I pay each and every month, and it is more than worth it. So jump on, use the tool, and if you have suggestions for how you want the tool to work for you, make sure to reach out to my brother. His name is Conrad, and tell him how you would like to use the tool. Okay, let's get back into the interview. After Landen walked us through all of the steps on this, many of our live listeners said how helpful and useful it was. This is amazing.
I'm glad this is helping because I think a lot of people don't know about this feature on Zoom. So I'm hoping that a lot of people start to add it to their own classes.
Yeah, me too. I'm thinking of immense possibilities, even when I'm attending, like, let's say I have a group coaching thing that I attend as an attendee, and sometimes someone says something and I'm like, what was that thing that they listed or said? And it would be there ready for you. Oh, wow.
Exactly. And I just think sometimes it's easier to follow along, especially if you're listening in on, I don't know, like the example I'm going to give is like a lecture where you're kind of listening to a lot of information. Sometimes it's nice to be able to scroll back up and just see, oh, did I hear that correctly? Or if you're taking notes, it's good to be able to have the visual there of all of the notes that you can kind of jot down and kind of go from there.
Yeah. Okay, great.
So this is how they can interact on a computer, but also I know some students will view yoga classes on their phone or a tablet. So I wanted to include that as well.
Do you walk people through this when they're new, or do you have an email that goes out, or how do you let them know this?
I do kind of mention it in the welcome email that we send out to all of the students that are joining virtually, just to let them know that we have this option. We include it in our broadcasts or our classes, and if you don't want to see them, you can turn them off. But if you do want to see them, this is how you turn them on.
Liz is saying, this is fantastic. I've been trying to figure this out, and with this simple tutorial, just tried it. It works. Thanks, Landen and Shannon. I'm excited to teach my first closed caption class this afternoon. Oh my gosh,
good.
Liz. That's like a instant win right
Yeah,
there.
it's super easy once, because you just have to enable it that one time in your actual account, and then every time you start a Zoom meeting, you do have to go in and just enable your live transcription to start when you want it to start, because initially you might not want it to start right at the class time, especially if I like to kind of meander a little bit in the beginning of my classes. So I don't want the transcriptions to grab all of that information, but I'll usually start it when I go to hit record for the entire class. I'll hit my live transcriptions and start it then.
Okay, that's good to know.
So I also wanted to go over recording with closed captioning, because I know some of us do the recording and we save our videos to the on-demand.
I am so excited about this. And I feel like this is a no-brainer. It's like
Oh,
we
yeah.
can make our yoga classes more accessible. And like you said, people can choose to have it on or off, whatever they want. And it's included.
Right. It's a great feature. I think that it's great. And especially where we're moving more into, I see a lot more videos on Facebook and on YouTube that are automatically, they automatically have the closed captioning. And that's good for people who are listening on mute and just following along. But I think this would be good for a whole bunch of different instances that we use Zoom for, not just yoga classes.
Yeah, I think so too. And I definitely see this happening more and more for, like you said, all kinds of learners, but definitely to make it accessible for the deaf or hard of hearing. So this is amazing. How's it been owning a yoga studio this year?
It's been interesting. So when I took over the studio, it was May 2019. And my first year as the owner was from May 2019 to May 2020. So within my first year, I had like a pandemic to deal with. And now I'm going into my second year, and my second year has basically entirely been pandemic yoga. So it's definitely been interesting, but I feel like it's given me the time to kind of explore these other options and these other tools that we couldn't do before. I like to think that owning the studio, I've made it more accessible in the ways that I've been trying to. I try my best to make everybody feel welcome and comfortable here. But I feel like this has been able to allow me to just step it up a notch and find ways to make this even more accessible, and even to people who maybe aren't comfortable taking an indoor yoga class, not because of the pandemic, just because of their own anxiety or their own schedule or things like that. I think that just having this virtual option has really opened doors like so much. I'm so glad that it's sort of like this weird feeling of gratitude that we were able to move virtual, because of course I'm not happy about the pandemic, but I'm happy that it brought along all of these solutions that we found.
Mm-hmm. I totally agree. I can see that you have some merch behind you for the
Yes.
studio. That's really exciting. Are there some other ways that you're really passionate about making your classes and your studio more accessible?
Yeah, so I a lot of the times when people inquire about the studio, so whether it's a phone call or I have a like an inquiry box on our website. So when somebody inquires to the studio, I try to always remember to offer them a like a first glance. So I think that it's really comforting to people to come into the studio, if they're coming in person, to come into the studio when it's completely empty and there's nobody else in here and we're not having a class, just so that they can sort of walk around and see what is going on in here. Because I think that that's one of the scariest things is I don't know what's behind those closed doors. I don't know, what's behind the curtains. And I think of it a little bit like when I was a kid and I went to kindergarten, we had a meet and greet with your teacher, and you went there with no other kids there, and you just sat with your teacher and you learned their name and you found out where your cubby was, and you were able to see the space when it wasn't in use. And I like to offer that to students before they come here if they're interested in coming and checking it out, because I think that makes the space more accessible. Another thing that I did this year was Google Maps came in and did a virtual tour. So it's not published yet on our Google listing, but it will be, so that you can actually click through our studio and walk around, essentially, like in a virtual way, to see all of the spots and to see where we keep all of our props and kind of get familiar with the space before you come in. And I think that really helps to ease people into yoga, and it eases their anxiety about trying a new place. And then another thing that I do for accessibility is we have some benches in the studio that are available for if anybody wants to take like chair yoga, or if they want to integrate that into like a regular yoga class. And then we also have some other like folding chairs and stuff like that if they want to space them out.
Well, that's amazing. I love this whole idea of that tour. And it is scary to go into a new place, and especially
Yeah.
a yoga studio. A friend of mine was just telling me the other day, "Oh, I've moved to this new place and I'm trying out this studio and I don't know what to expect." It's that yeah, it's the anxiety of around like what's this going to be like? So that's great.
And I sort of I mean, this is just how I interact with businesses. I know before I go into a business, I usually look them up to see what the inside looks like, or if I'm going someplace that I have like an appointment at, I'll go and look at what the outside looks at to looks like, so that I can make sure that I actually am at the right place, and that I have the the directions. I know what the parking situation is like. I know if I'm parking on the street or if I'm in a parking lot. So I think adding those things to your yoga studio, or if you have your own like home business, I think having those photos so that people can get that insider look, I think it just helps to take away their anxiety. It allows them to see what's going on, what they can expect once they do arrive.
Oh my gosh, that's so great. Is there anything else that you'd want to share with yoga teachers about your own journey, about owning a yoga studio, about making classes accessible? Anything else?
I like to this. I don't want this to sound, like I'm selfish, but I like to teach the way that I would want to be taught, and I like to run my business the way that I would want to meet an owner of a business. So I like to be available by phone. Like my studio phone rings right to my cell phone. Everybody has that number. I like to be available to my students, and whether that's by email or social media, I like to interact with them. I like to remind people that just because we're yoga teachers or yoga business owners, we're still people. And as soon as we walk out those doors, everything doesn't go out the window, but we're not like guru level, so we still live our lives, and there's still things that we do. And I think that it's important to remind our students that they're not trying to emulate this perfect person that's teaching them at the front of the room, where we're all kind of in this together. And I like to make my yoga relatable. So adding in this accessibility piece, I think makes yoga more relatable to everybody. And I think about the journey that I had through learning yoga and through trying a lot of studios, and being sort of like the minority of being a guy in a yoga class. And I remember how many studios I walked into and how uncomfortable I would feel. And I was very careful about where I would set up my mat, because I didn't want to, maybe like offend somebody. I didn't want to be too close to them. I wanted to give everybody space. And then once I journeyed down the road of being a yoga instructor, I also was very cautious of how am I going to portray myself as a guy yoga teacher, and do I want to do hands-on adjustments? How do I ask for consent for hands-on adjustments, and make that more accessible for people to say no to me and to say no to my instructors, and just including that in like our whole entire like livelihood of the studio. I want every piece of the studio to just feel like everybody's welcome here, and that we're giving everybody the chance to come enjoy yoga.
That's amazing. You said, "Oh, maybe this is because I'm selfish. I've created this business and these yoga classes," but it sounds like it's very intentional and from a place of compassion for what it feels like to walk into a space and to want everyone to feel comfortable there. So I appreciate this so much. Thank you so much for putting all of the slides together. That was like above and beyond. This was perfect with the slides. How can people take a class with you or let you know how great this was? How can they connect with you after today?
My website is emeraldyoga.com. And if you want to email me, I love feedback. My email is emeraldyogastudio@gmail.com, but you can also find my email on my website. So if you head there first, you'll find all my contact info on there too.
Perfect. Thank you so much. Thank you for caring for us today and like creating this whole visual experience. That was amazing. Yeah. Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you. Thank you so much for having me.
Oh my goodness. Thank you so much again, Landen. What an amazing podcast. What an amazing resource you have given our connected yoga teachers. I am excited to see how this changes how we're sharing online yoga, online meetings, making it just more accessible to people. And I would love to hear from you, connected yoga teachers. What did you take away from today's episode? Have you set up closed captioning for your online yoga classes? Or is there some other way that you've worked to make yoga classes and yoga spaces more accessible to people? I would love to hear about that either in our Facebook group or on the show notes page. Again, the show notes can be found at theconnectedyogateacher.com/229. I have some thanks as I close out here now. First of all, I want to say a huge thank you to you for taking the time to listen, for taking the time to learn about making yoga more accessible in every single way that we can. I feel honored that you've taken this time to set this up, to have a listen, and to hang out together here today. I know that you have a lot of other things that you could be doing, and there are millions upon millions of podcasts that you could be listening to. So it means a lot that you've spent your time here. I also want to thank our team because without them, this podcast just wouldn't even be possible, and all of the other things going on behind the scenes. Alrighty, connected yoga teachers, I want to know, what will you be doing this week to stay connected to yourself, your yoga practice, and to your community so that you can share the yoga that lights you up?